Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar by Core Recruitment. Thank you very much for joining us today for our BrewDog special. Now, Core has been doing this webinar series since March, and we've recorded quite a few webinars, all of which can be seen on our website, www.corerecruitment.com. Core is going to be continuing with our webinar series into next year, but we're going to be cutting down to 2 webinars every Wednesday on a couple of specific subject areas. We're also going to be featuring companies who have kind of pivoted well or done well through the pandemic, or exceptional businesses who are going to be nailing it in 2021. Over the summer, we did one with Extreme, and we've got today that we're going to be doing with BrewDog, and then we've got one that we're doing tomorrow with Dorchester Collection. So if there's any companies that you think would be worth us featuring, then please do get in touch with me on christian@corerecruitment.com to recommend anybody, or if you'd like to get involved. At Core, in the past couple of weeks, since the vaccine has been announced and the change in presidential power came about, there's been much more positivity in the marketplace, and we've seen companies starting to look at their recruitment plans again for 2021, which we take to be a very good sign. Now, back to today, and we're very lucky to be joined by 4 of the senior management team from BrewDog, who are going to be giving us a bit of an overview about the business and how they've been handling the pandemic. We're going to work our way around the group with some set questions, but we would really encourage you to kind of like put any comments that you like into the comments box. And as we work our way around the group, if you've got any questions that pop up, then we'll try and work as many of them into the hour as we possibly can. So first of all, my colleague Arno is going to just show us a little video about BrewDog if you're not as familiar with them. And we'll get that underway, and then we'll be straight over to David. Arno? Can we all hear that? Take yourself off mute, Arno.
In 2006, we got the opportunity to meet beer legend Michael Jackson, and he tasted one of our home brews.
He told us to quit our jobs and start making beer, so we did.
So in 2007, on this godforsaken industrial estate, in this derelict shed, BrewDog came howling into the world. It looks really quite nice.
As good as it ever looked. 2 humans, 1 dog, and a big mission to make other people as passionate about fantastic beer as we are.
And the first beer we ever brewed here was Punk IPA.
And we spent 7 years here. 49 dog years, 2,555 days right here.
Any way you look at it, it's a fucking long time.
It's a long time, but I wouldn't give a second of it back. In 2013, we moved into our new Ellen HQ.
Having built the world's first crowd-funded brewery,
We've constantly expanded it since we moved in.
and today it's one of the most technologically advanced craft breweries on the planet.
Enabling us to make some outstanding beers for you,
And us.
mainly us.
This was our first ever bar that we opened in our hometown of Aberdeen in 2010.
Now we've got 50 sites all over the planet, from Columbus to Berlin, from Tokyo to Sao Paulo, and from Aberdeen to London. We've also pioneered a whole new generation of business models.
BrewDog is part owned by a community of over 55,000 equity funds.
We've caused controversy, disrupted an entire industry, and worn our heart on our sleeve.
We have always strived to make world-class beers and be the best company to work for we possibly can be.
We've always focused on 2 things, our people and our beer.
Along the way, we've made some crazy beers, including a beer made in the North Atlantic, a 32% Imperial Stout, The world's strongest beer at 55% and served in taxidermy. A beer made at the bottom of the ocean, and a beer made to parody the Russian president.
We've also stormed the Bank of England in a tank, upset the poor beer troop, thrown cats out of a helicopter, made our own TV show, and given away all of our beer recipes.
And made some killer videos.
Yes, it's easy now. Yes, it's easy now. Find me and follow me through corridors of factories and files. You must follow this academic factory.
Also destroyed generic industrial beers.
Lots of generic industrial beer.
In the last year, we've also built an amazing new brewery in Columbus, Ohio.
And we're just completing overworks, our sour beer facility at our LNHQ.
Everything that we've done, everything that we've built, we've done in conjunction with our fantastic team and our amazing Equity Punk community.
It's been a pretty crazy first 10 years.
Here's to the next 10.
The revolution's just getting started.
Bring it on.
Excellent, guys. So that's just a bit of a snapshot there. And now I'm going to pass over to David McDowall, the Group COO, to give us a little overview and talk us down the initial stages of lockdown within the business. David?
Hi, Christian. Thanks for having us all. And yeah, that video is, I guess it's a couple of years old now. It makes it look like a lot of fun here on Planet BrewDog. And it is sometimes, and sometimes it's a lot of hard work as well, building the team building what we've built over the years. So I guess more specifically talking about how this year has gone for us as a business, then on the 16th, 17th of March, like thousands of businesses around the country and around the planet, we realized that we were headed straight into turmoil, and we knew that we were losing 70% or so of our revenue overnight. And this has been quite the most challenging and difficult year that so many businesses have faced, and we've been in no way immune to that. I guess our business plan went out of the window overnight, and the plan became very, very simple. Actually, the plan right away became two things. We knew that throughout the course of the year, we had to firstly find a pathway for the business to survive, and secondly, by doing that, protect as many of the livelihoods of our awesome 2,000 team members as possible. And in reality, I remember us writing those two things on a big whiteboard on Tuesday, the 17th of March, and that became the focus of the business. Alongside that, we realized that we had to get out of panic mode and get into action mode pretty quickly. And if there's anything that I'm particularly proud of the team achieving this year, it's how quickly we moved into action mode and how quickly we tried to create opportunities where it looked as though there weren't any. Also, I think I'm really proud of how the team realized very quickly that we had an opportunity to use our platform to do some good. So I think the most successful way that we did that was over the spring and summer, we repurposed our distillery here and found a way to create hand sanitizer when there was a real need for that product, and made and donated over 500,000 bottles of hand sanitizers to the NHS, to key workers and to care homes around the country. And that really galvanized the team behind a spirit and a purpose of doing some good. And we always say that we firmly believe that business can be a force for good. We had some fun along the way as well. So there's a couple of projects that it felt as though, one of them is actually when there was a load of publicized consternation about Dominic Cummins and his trip to Barnard Castle, and the country was in quite a dark place at that point. So we decided that it would be fun to put a straw poll on our website and ask our team and our community and our social community if we were making a beer to commemorate that occasion, what would the name of that beer be? And that became a real kind of viral hit for us. And it turned into a real business opportunity for us. And Barnard Castle Eye Test, the beer that came out of that process, was our biggest selling piece of new product development this year. And at peak, when we launched it, we were selling in the region of 1,000 cases every 10 minutes on our website. So, so finding a way to interject a little bit of irreverence and a little bit of humor and a little bit of escapism into a landscape that was pretty dark was something that I think is at the heart of the BrewDog spirit and ethos, and that the team do really, really well. And lastly, the biggest focus for us this year, over and above finding a way for this business to have a positive pathway out of COVID, was the work that we've done on sustainability. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later on, I think, but the embryo of that is that we firmly believe that if we are to find a clear path through the next decade of climate crisis, then business has to lead the way. We thought that we were making a difference in some of the things that we did, and we'd eliminated plastic from our packaging supply chain and other things along those lines. But then we realized that we just weren't doing enough. We actually went to an event and heard Sir David Attenborough speak. And it was a stark realization that all businesses had to get themselves into action mode from a sustainability perspective. So we've done a huge amount of work this year to, and the upshot of that is that, you know, we're the world's first carbon negative brewery, and there's a heck of a lot of time and effort and hard work going into getting us to that point. And the reality is we're only just getting started.
Excellent, David. Thanks very much for being with us today. Much appreciated. Now we're going to move around some of David's senior management team. James, could you just tell us a little bit about you and what you do for the business, and then we'll go into some questions.
Yeah, sure. My name's James. I'm a managing director for the BrewDog bars business. So I look after our 104, soon to be 5 bars. We're opening a bar in Shanghai this week on Friday. So up to 105 bars around the world.
Excellent. And regarding kind of like, you know, your customer base, what would you advise other companies to do around building loyalty and maintaining that loyalty, James?
In terms of loyalty, for me, it's fundamentally about whether the consumer believes in your brand or your product. I think that they need to be aligned with your missions and what you stand for as a business. So if you're currently struggling in that fashion, you should take a look at whether your customers are very obvious, your customers can understand what your business is about, what your brand's about. I think that customers and consumers of modern day, and it's changing all the time, are looking for real and genuine voices from their brands. And I think that's what BrewDog do really, really well. I think if you're trying to keep that loyalty, and I think sometimes I get frustrated by quick fix apps that give you discounts and give customers freebies and they can visit more often or not. But for us, discounting is the last option, and we want to keep the customers excited. We don't want to take them for granted. And one of the examples of that is that when we reopened after the first lockdown, we were very conscious that the whole hospitality marketplace was likely to be competing for less customers. So instead of going down a discounted route, we actually worked really hard during the lockdown period to add 10 new customer touch points, little bits of magic that make hospitality experience great and really kind of keep our customers loyal to us. And I think the next level of that is about ownership. I think that's what BrewDog does really well. And whether it be real ownership in terms of people investing in our business through equity for punks, or just feeling like they own and they have decisions in the brand. And when we change our food menu, for example, we actually do it collaboratively with the customers. So we never take a dish off without putting up against a special and letting the customers know if you like the special more, you can influence that menu. So that ownership piece is really key for me as well.
Excellent, thanks for that, James. Now, there's been a lot said in the press over the years about Brew Hotel, BrewDog Hotel, kind of like some sort of an accommodation offer coming from you guys. Is that finally happening?
Well, I mean, yes, it already has happened actually in Ohio. So I think the original concept of a brew hotel for us came from, I suppose, a goal of ours was to create a world-beating, globally renowned beer destination in our brewery in Ohio. We love hospitality, all aspects of it. And the ability to take our beer and our brewery and our tap room experience into an overnight stay. I mean, what couldn't go wrong? So we have an incredible hotel in Ohio. It's actually fared up really well, even during lockdown in the US. It's one of our most resilient businesses. We've got plans in place to open Manchester, hopefully by the summer this year, with a rooftop bar. We have more plans to do that around the world, and potentially looking at plans in our brewery in Brisbane as well to do something similar. But for us, the magic of having a beer fridge in your shower, a punk tap in every room, and really connecting that brand into an overnight stay was a lot of fun for us, and even more fun for some customers.
Absolutely. Now you guys are still expanding at the moment, and you're opening new bars into 2021. Can you tell us a bit about the challenges and the rationale behind that?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, everyone knows the challenges of working at the minute, and I can't tell you how difficult opening a bar in Shanghai would have been anyway, but doing it via Zoom, FaceTime and WhatsApp message with our local team has been even harder, and our team has done an incredible job to react and do that, and we're opening on Friday. I think that fundamentally our attitude towards hospitality is that we believe in it. We are continuing to open and expand in the UK and around the world. Pandemic or not, we have a belief that people need great hospitality experiences, a great place to relax and escape from their life, the day at the office, hang out with friends in bars, and we're committed to continue to provide our brand.
Excellent, James. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. How many openings have you guys scheduled in for 2021?
It depends. We're kind of lining up a bit of a pipeline now, and I think that for us, there are definite opportunities in the market to speak to creative and innovative landlords to help us help us get new sites and to help us make the economics work. We're also looking at we opened a site in Dublin last year, which we've actually fallen in love with, and we've created this kind of icon concept around that. It's a huge floor plan, double layered site, an outside terrace, roof terrace on the river in Dublin, and we're trying to do as many of them as we can in the next kind of couple of years. This year, targeting Amsterdam, some more in Australia, South Africa, and obviously France and Italy as well. So we're trying to get that icon venue, which gives us such brand exposure and gets that customers really excited about visiting a bar and pub. More of those.
Absolutely. And do you guys still offer an incentive when somebody finds a bar for you?
Yeah, sure. We've got a bar hunter program, and our bar in Exeter was actually found by a bar hunter. So we've not opening it. Exeter and Plymouth were meant to open before Christmas. We've delayed that to January for obvious reasons. But our Exeter bar was found by one of our fans who was out keen to get a BrewDog pub in his hometown.
Excellent, excellent. Win-win scenario, right? From a sales perspective, is delivery going to be a big priority for you guys going forward with all these local lockdowns happening?
I mean, I think it was anyway, even pre-pandemic. We'd been fortunate enough to invest in the tech to do our own delivery and owned branded delivery experience just before lockdown, and we all were very, very relieved we'd done that, because it helped us pivot really quickly and do things like drive-through almost on within 24 hours, which was great. But going forward with lockdowns, it's a massive benefit to our business and really important. Before COVID, we didn't have a role of head of delivery, and actually we've actually now appointed someone. So our best general manager at delivery for the last 2 years, who was really passionate about the topic, now runs our global delivery efforts. And actually that's about us making incremental gains in all the markets we operate in, and building a delivery business that we're really proud of, 2, customers love, and 3, have a really good revenue stream as well.
Excellent. And just for the guys who don't know, you're calling in from your London office, right?
Yeah, London office, yeah.
Excellent. It's a nice polar bear in the background there. Thanks very much for that, James. Much appreciated. Now, coming on to you, Karen, can you give us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been with the business?
So I joined BrewDog in January this year as the people director, and within probably 9 weeks was full on into the pandemic. So who knew what I was letting myself in for this year?
And how, in hindsight, how was your? I mean, how did you get under the skin of the business and all of that kind of stuff in such a challenging year? It
probably made my induction into the business and getting to know the business a lot quicker than it would have happened in a normal situation. I certainly got to know my colleagues pretty well, pretty quickly, when we were dealt with the challenges that we knew we had to deal with. And as David said, we'll never forget that that week in March when we had to make some really hard decisions and land some really tough messages with the teams. So yeah, probably not an experience I'd want to repeat, but definitely made my ability to get under the skin of the business and understand everything from a process point of view a lot quicker.
And I mean, there's very few brands that have got the kind of following that BrewDog has got. From a recruitment perspective, how do you separate out skills from followers when you're recruiting for the business?
That's one thing that has amazed me, and I've literally just been doing some shortlisting this morning, and the amount of people that apply for our roles who are fans, like they're either the equity punks or they literally start their application with "I am a huge BrewDog fan, and I love your beer." And we get contacted directly through LinkedIn when we don't have any vacancies to apply for, with people just saying, "I just love your brand, I want to work for you." And especially with the carbon negative as well, that's created another pool of people who are sustainability fans and want to work for the first sustainable brewery. So that's opened up another group. But and me and JB have had this chat before about the ideal people to work in the bars. And I think you've almost got to separate it out depending what roles you're working for. Some roles you have to have the technical skill to do the roles. In other roles, actually being a fan and having the right attitude and the right will is sometimes better than having the skill and not the will. So if you take one of our bar roles, we could have the best bar person ever. Technically, they know everything about beer, but their relationship with our customers, they don't have that, I almost call it that pintability factor. They're not the person you'd want to go and sit and have a pint with, which means that they might not have the best customer experience. So actually, I'd rather teach them beer and technique if they've got the right attitude to work for us. Then if you've got if it's a real technical thing, yes, you've got to have the technical ability as well as be able to work within the BrewDog culture. So it's really difficult, but we get a lot of people apply for roles who don't have the right skills. They are literally BrewDog fans, I've never come across that in any business I've worked for before. So it's great.
And how do you manage the kind of applications? Because I can imagine you might want to tell them they might not be quite right for a job, but at the same time kind of still like BrewDog. Do all of them take the message well, or is there any techniques you use?
Yeah, so we've our responses are as you would imagine from BrewDog. They always start with glad to hear you're such a fan. Really thanks for explaining all the beer that you've got in your fridge and what your favourite beer is. We don't have anything, but keep drinking the beer, and especially now we're even responding. Keep drinking the beer because you're making a difference to the climate by drinking the our BrewDog beer. So we can be quite quirky with our responses as well, which means we get a real good buy-in still. And the thing with every applicant is they still need to leave their application, even if they're not successful, they still need to be our friend. They're a customer, everybody's a customer.
Absolutely. And can you tell us a little bit about the challenges about recruiting in Ellen? How do you attract talent up there?
It's there's a huge population that can commute into Ellen. I think one thing the pandemic's taught us as well, we probably used to have a bit of everybody was based in the office up in Ellen. We've not had that since March. Very few people have been up there because we've protected the brewery. The office in Ellen is shared with the brewery, and we've needed to protect the brewery so we can carry on producing. So we probably will take a bit of a different view now that not everybody has to be sat in the office. We have our London office as well. So we've recently put some finance roles up, and we've said actually you can be based in London or you can be based in Ellen. We're not wedded now to everybody being up in Ellen. There's a lot of oil and gas in the area that will apply for our roles. I suppose you have to split the roles. So people can't work from home or work out of London. If they're producing the beer, they've got to be up in Ellen. We have a lot of people who would love to work for BrewDog but aren't able to relocate. Beautiful part of the world, but not everybody wants to live in Ellen. So it is you've got to make a lifestyle choice to want to relocate up there. But we're finding that we have people now who are willing to work and live up in Ellen during the week, but then be, you know, or do a few weeks up there and then go back home. So we're starting to find people will do that now. I think because of the climate, people probably will be a little bit more flexible now about the work location, because there's not as many roles around anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And from a technology perspective, especially from kind of a people, culture, communication perspective, can you tell us a bit about what you've been using and to keep in touch with your guys over this period and what you'll be using moving forward?
Yeah, so when even before I started, we'd started looking at our internal comms, and one thing we didn't have was an internal comms platform that hit every single person in the business. So we use Yapster in retail, which is brilliant, but it didn't work in production. So people in the brewing and production weren't necessarily getting the comms if they weren't looking into their emails. The field sales would be looking at their emails but didn't have Yapster. We had like on-site all hands that not everybody was seeing. And one thing we knew we had to fix quite quickly was to get an internal comms app that was fit for everybody. We were due to launch in March. The pandemic sort of got in the way. But in September, we launched our new comms app, which means now that every single person gets the comms at the same time, no matter where you're located. So it works across every single country that we operate in. Everybody's signed up to it. It means we can do video comms now. So David sends out a weekly business update, which before was an email that not everybody got. We now send a video update out with some stats around it as well. And it just means that everybody gets the same messages at the same time. And you know, it has the chat functions, it has everything in there. So it's still very new for us. We're still making it, you know, making sure it works correctly for everybody across every country. But it's really improved our process no end.
Excellent, Karen. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for being with us. Much appreciated.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Now I'm going to come on to Stuart. Stuart, can you tell us a little bit about what you do for BrewDog?
Yes, I'm head of grocery at BrewDog. Been with the business just over 18 months now. So yeah, I've got the responsibility and pleasure of serving all our grocery customers within the UK.
Great. And what attracted you to BrewDog initially, Stuart? Were you a fan before?
So yeah, clearly a big fan before. Always enjoyed the beers, and I was actually in the industry. Been in the beer and cider industry for 8 years now, and again always aspired of what they stood for as a brand. Always kept to the USP, and I suppose the biggest one as well was once you got into that recruitment process, it became even more infectious as before. So as you started to learn the people, the processes, it's a strange feeling that the hunger and appetite just grew day on day. So yeah, absolutely delighted to join the organisation just over 18 months ago, and yeah, service the UK customers with 1 million cans of Punker each week.
Now, regarding the product range side of things, tell us about working with retailers through COVID and how your approach has changed.
Yeah, I suppose, like David said, that week in March was day one, was what we're going to do. Everything was up in the air to almost 24 hours later, sitting down and go, right, okay, how are we going to take this business? How are we going to survive? How are we going to keep as many of our employees in a role as possible? And we made that decision there and then that we weren't going to fail Punk. We were going to back Punk to the hill, and pleased to say that we didn't throughout that 6-month period, and really protected our hero brand. But at the same time, it was almost an opportunity to look at our range, look at customers' range, and get really under the skin of the detail to go, is this product serving the customer? Is it incremental? Is it beneficial? Because at that moment in time, when resource was tight at the brewery, both from an internal perspective, delivery slots were hard to come by in retailers. Space on shelf is always of paramount importance. We had to make sure that everyone who was put in, whether you were brewing the beer, whether you were distributing the beer, whether you were selling the beer, everyone who touched it needed to be, I suppose, getting the most back. So we condensed our range throughout the pandemic, and And actually what that has then enabled to do as restrictions have eased and we've got back to a, not normality, but the new normal, so to speak, as we've been able to bring new products to market and new products that customers preferred than our old ones. So I think it was an opportunity to take a step back, reflect and look what was working and what wasn't, and from a category approach, take what's best to our customers. I think that was the first and foremost, and also throughout it was, I think David mentioned it before on the hand sanitizer. You have these customer conversations and you have the commercial agreements sometimes and disagreements other times, and retailers push you hard and we push them hard back, and that's absolutely the right thing to do to get the right thing for the customer. What was so pleasing though was that week when backs against the walls, all bets were sort of off, and it was kind of like, how do we help each other through that? Whether it was us through hand sanitizer or I suppose I've got to mention Tesco in this conversation as well. When we got that phone call from before any furlough or government intervention had come, and they offered to take 1,000 of our bar staff to protect their jobs. That was kind of quite emotional, quite you really found out who backed you and supported you when the times were tough. So I think that was probably, of my career to date, one of the most proudest moments, to be able to jump on a call with a team to go, we kind of don't know what we're doing and where we're going, but we're going to get there. But the first and foremost is, like David said, protect people's livelihoods, and Tesco to offer that was extremely pleasing.
That's really good. And in terms of trends for the future, Stuart, what do you expect in the grocery side of things?
So throughout the pandemic, we've seen an increase in penetration. So with customers coming into craft, which is extremely pleasing. So potentially where you've not had craft offerings in on-trade outlets that they now do have in the off, we've seen a lot of people come into that craft category, which can only benefit the on and off going forward. We've also seen an increase in weight of purchase, so a lot more people buying into 4 packs and 12 packs rather than the single vessel sizes. But we do also understand that single vessel sizes are important for penetration. So we need to have a look at the category going forward. We need to have a look at, is the correct space on shelf for the correct pack formats? Have we got correct pack formats in single vessel sizes with glass versus can and the sustainability approach, which we're massively proud of at BrewDog. So yeah, I definitely think penetration in craft will continue to rise. I think weight of purchase will continue to rise. And I think it's an onus on us and as an organisation as well to make sure that our single formats are right for the shopper and right for today.
Excellent, Stuart. Thank you for that. There's been a lot of kind of new breweries and distillers and all of that kind of stuff. It's quite a vocational thing, and I think there's going to be kind of like, a slew of kind of new businesses that come out of the other side of this. What advice would you give to a brewer wanting to get into the off trade?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost is to stick to what you stand for. So you've got to have that DNA in your organisation. You've got to continue to stand for that, and you've got to be comfortable to put your brand where you want to put it. And also you need to give the customers a reason to believe. So what's the benefit of them putting your brand on their shelf than someone else's? And I think once you've got that USP, once you stick to your brand and your core values of your organisation, I think that's got to be your start point. I think after that, looking at your own team, your own culture, people still do buy from people, but if you've got a strong brand and you've got a strong team, you're definitely onto something. I would also say look at all end-to-end to supply chain. So yeah, it is all about the brand, but if you're not turning up in time, if your basics are flawed, if your simple things like your barcodes are not correct, your admin isn't in place, customers will, no matter how good your brand is and how much they value you, they potentially won't put you on shelves. So yeah, get your brand right, get your team right. Look at your end-to-end supply chain from where you brew it to you deliver it to your marketing plan behind, and bring all those three together. And yeah, you're definitely onto something.
Brilliant, Stuart. That's great. Thank you very much for being with us. Much appreciated.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we've got a couple of questions that we're going to come to David with, and then we're going to do some Q&A at the end. So if you're dialing in as an attendee and you've got questions, then please do keep on putting them up, and we'll try and get as many of them into the end as we can. There is one question that I just want to ask, which I thought was quite relevant, that John had put into the Q&A about the BrewDog dogmas that are on the wall behind David. And if you could talk to us a little bit about those just before the before we go into your questions, David. Is that all right?
Yeah, happy to do that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Actually, it's a brilliant question, because it's, in my view, the most important document in the organization, and that's why it's on the wall right behind me. So when I, 6 years or so ago, when I joined the business and spent some time visiting some of the team and visiting some of the bars, I was amazed by how clear an understanding of the mission of the business there was. So everyone that I spoke to knew that the business success to make other people as passionate about great beer as we are. And we make our decisions with that in mind exactly the same way now, 13 years down the line. And I think one of the things that's difficult for growing businesses is trying to find a way to set a framework for their team to act and behave without strangling the ingenuity and the spirit and the entrepreneurial creativity of their teams. So we think that process and bureaucracy is organizational scar tissue. We think that those things are put in place because the people in an organization are either not the right people, or they're not given the right framework in which to act and exhibit their skills day in, day out. So this is as structured as it gets in terms of our people framework, and these are our dogmas. They're the 5 behaviors by which we make our decisions, and they're how we ask our team to behave day in, day out. So I'll fly through them really quickly. So first and foremost, the first one is we are a meritocracy. So we are open and honest about the fact that you earn your position in this team. And if you do that, I think there's great opportunity. I think there's some fantastic career stories from people who've joined the business. And, in the same way that you earn your place on a pro sports team, you earn your place on this team. Secondly, I think that actually when you look at the video from earlier on, you can see all of the kind of consumer-facing PR stuff. And I think people build their perception around BrewDog and the team from that, which is absolutely right. I think you dig under the detail, then you see a team who are really disciplined and rigorous about how they run this business. So we talk about owning our numbers. And for me, the spirit of that is that if 155,000 people have invested an average of £400 in your business, and that could be a hairdresser, someone who works in an office, a taxi driver, and they've given £400 to us to invest in our business, you know what, we're going to take bloody good care in how we invest that £400. The third one is be where the action is. So we think that unnecessary hierarchy gets in the way of pace and gets in the way of good decision making. So we like our leaders to be as close to the action as possible. The fourth one is count time in dog years. So we always say that if a conventional business does something in 7 years or 7 months, then BrewDog should do that in 1 year or 1 month. And that challenges us to keep that scrappy startup pace and spirit that was the embryo of this fantastic business. And the last one is challenge everything. We should always demonstrate a ton of humility and the ability to cut off our nose to spite our face. And it's often overused this year, the word pivot, but our ability to pivot and do things that probably didn't seem anywhere near close to being in our plan even a year or so ago has been one of the successes of this year. And that's because this team challenges everything that we do day in, day out. So those are the BrewDog dogmas, they're the behaviors by which our team live and breathe day in, day out.
Excellent, thank you very much. Good question, John, thank you very much. Now, in terms of the future, David, could you tell us a little bit about climate change and what you guys are doing and how others can support?
Yeah, I mean, I probably set this up in the intro earlier on. You know, we felt we were making a difference, and we realised that we had a long way to go. So it started from, you know, our project, which we call the BrewDog Tomorrow project, started from us looking at what we were doing and realising we had a long way to go. If we can use our platform to support and inspire other businesses to do the right thing from a climate and sustainability perspective, then that's a fantastic add-on and byproduct. But it really started from us realizing that we weren't doing enough. And right now we're still not doing enough. There's so much more for us to do. And I guess I could talk about this one for a long time, but I'll split it into a couple of key areas. First and foremost, we realized that we needed a pathway to reduce and eliminate emissions from all of our facilities as quickly as we possibly could. So in the brewing facility here, then we put a 24-month plan in place to eliminate all emissions from the brewing and production process. And that's a really, really aggressive plan that we are well down the road of. And that's the same for all of our facilities around the world. And at the same time as that, we decided that we should become carbon negative as a business by, in addition to reducing our own emissions, taking it one step further and supporting projects that remove carbon from the air whilst we are still putting carbon into the air. So we double offset everything that still goes into the air from a carbon perspective from all of our BrewDog facilities. And we've done that by investing in really high quality offsetting schemes. We've also done that by using a heap of brilliant independent businesses and auditors to tell us what our footprint is. And we've looked at scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions. So we're double offsetting and trying to eliminate the impacts of our carbon in all aspects right through our supply chain. The next thing that we did was that we realized that our carbon was kind of our problem. And when we were looking at the type of schemes that we wanted to support via our offsetting program, we decided that one way to get our hands around it and make that topic really tangible was to plant our own forests. So we bought a chunk of land this year, and over the next 24 months, we'll plant almost 1 million trees in the northeast of Scotland in the BrewDog forest. And that's something that's really galvanized our team and our community. And on site at that forest, you'll be able to visit a BrewDog themed campsite, and we're going to do sustainability retreats and try and bring that whole spirit of sustainability to life. Every one of the 155,000 people that have invested in our business has a tree in the forest, or will have a tree in the forest that is geolocated so they can see where that is. And the last bit, and probably one of the most important bits for me, is that we decided that we try and really engage our team in the process as well. So we use Popprint, which is an awesome app that Karen worked really hard with that team on, in order that we can double offset our team's total carbon impact, what they have at work and what they have in their day-to-day life as well. And in true BrewDog spirit, we also double offset the carbon impact of any dogs that they have. And that was a fun calculation to do. So trying to take the team with us was really an important part of this. And we're also very close to being accredited as a B Corp, which has been a really, really intense process and has helped us find out a lot about ourselves in terms of how we can become a more forward-thinking and sustainable organization.
Excellent, David. That's quite a lot. Now, regarding the e-commerce side of things, could you tell us a little bit about what's been successful for you guys and what you've been operating and promoting? Because you guys cover beer, spirits, merch, like lots of areas.
Yeah, I mean, we had a pretty small, relatively kind of embryonic e-commerce business that we ran for the past few years. And actually in the 6 to 12 months prior to COVID hitting us hard, we'd been working on how we create a bit more of a strategy on how we build that, and also try and internationalize it as well. But it was still a relatively small part of our overall business. I think e-com revenue for BrewDog in 2019 was just under £3 million for the full clearly there was a big change in consumer demand and consumer behavior. And we thought that and when we saw people moving out of bricks and mortar on premise through the restrictions and the closures, we needed to find ways to get our beer to people as, in that type of environment. So we worked really hard on e-com. One of the key things that we did is that the shop used to be quite a complicated place to navigate. And it used to have lots and lots of different SKUs. And people used to go and buy a box and kind of fill it with 12 or 24 different things. And actually, there's quite a lot of places that do that, quite a lot of great e-com options that do that. And we decided that there was maybe an opportunity to find a way to create a craft beer online presence that was more accessible. So the kind of idea was craft beer made easy. And we built a series of bundles of different styles of beer and seasonal beers that you could buy direct from the BrewDog online shop. And we invested hard in our team actually over the past 12 months to get the right capability of people to drive and run that for us. And we've grown e-com by just under 1,400% this year. It's become a really material part of our business. A year's revenue is now a quiet month's revenue. And our e-com business has just become an incredibly important part of what we did. And the bit that really made it work, I think sometimes great kind of innovation comes from necessity. And the necessity for us was fulfillment was really difficult. So complex fulfillment of 12 and 24 individual things was almost impossible back in March and April. So we had to find a way to fulfill orders in a simple way. And that's where the kind of prepackaged bundles came from. And that concept really resonated with customers who wanted to find a way to click 2 or 3 things and get a box of great beer delivered to their home. So the team in the BrewDog e-com and digital business have really transformed that part of our business this year.
Excellent, David. Thank you for that. Next bit, and for those, I'm sure a lot of people watching will know, and people have maybe heard the phrase before, but could you just talk us through Equity for Punks?
Yeah, sure. So in 2009, the business needed some capital to grow. At that point in time, we had a kind of embryonic grocery business that was starting to do reasonably well, a long way away from the business that Stu now looks after. But we had some good UK relationships. We were starting to grow internationally, and we had ambitions to open the first BrewDog bar, but there wasn't anything open yet. It was the year after the banking crisis. So there weren't that many banks kind of queuing up to give a chunk of cash to a couple of guys from the northeast of Scotland, making this really hoppy, bitter beer that nobody really understood, and with a slightly maverick approach to brand and marketing. So again, I think the innovation came from necessity, and we're really early adopters of crowdfunding. And Equity for Punks was born. 5 different sets of legal advisors in 2008, 2009 told us that couldn't be done. Thankfully, James and Martin at the time stuck with that concept, and we kind of bet everything on that concept. And the first round of Equity Punks raised just under £800,000, which was our fuel for the next 12 months of growth. 10, 12 years later, we have 155,000 investors. We've raised over 70 million of capital via our Equity Punks program. But we've learned something really, really important. We've learned that it wasn't really a fundraising exercise. I mean, to begin with, that was why it was there. It was necessity. But what we have created is a community building exercise. So we now have this incredible army of over 150,000 fans and ambassadors, mystery customers, sometimes our harshest critics, all around the planet who help us grow this brand.
Excellent, David. Thank you very much for that. Now, we've got quite a few questions that have come in. I'll default them to David, and then if there's somebody else that you would rather pick them up, David, then it's probably the most efficient way of getting through some of them. So Francis has messaged in saying, what kind of franchisees are you looking for? Individual for single units or multi-site operators?
I'll let James Brown take that one.
Yeah, so it depends on the market really, and we love to engage with people who are really passionate about beer. That isn't the only criteria to open a franchise bar, but it's a key one. And depends on the market around the world, and it depends how well funded you are as well. So we are open to speak to anybody. You'll see that we have recently opened a number of UK franchise locations. So in Swansea, we recently, during the pandemic, actually opened Headingley with a partner called Reds, who are obviously a northern-based restaurant business. And so a really mixed bag across the estate. Probably in larger markets and more complex markets, we're looking for multi-site operators and people who can help us grow, but we're open to speak to anybody.
Great. And just staying with you, James, Russell messaged in a question about a comment that you'd made earlier on the delivery side of things. How important is sustainable and e-delivery to BrewDog, also owning the delivery process rather than feeding delivery giants such as Amazon, etc.?
I think it's really important for us to invest in that. And we actually have a number of electric vehicles delivering either food from our bars and also delivering to our grocery suppliers as well. So it's really, really important to own that process, not just from an eco perspective, but that's a really important part, but also to make sure that you own that consumer experience as well. And that and we talked earlier on about our delivery app from our bars, and we call it BrewDog Now. And we think that's a really important mix, working with Deliveroo, for example. And we still work with Deliveroo, but we also want to own that experience and deliver ourselves as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, James. Coming back, David, there was a question that was also put up from Alan regarding, is there a plans to create a Welsh beer to promote the Welsh language? In my opinion, this would be massive for BrewDog as he lives in North Wales.
No, Alan, there's not.
That's a short answer. Thank you for that, David. Andrew messaged in a question as well, asking on the sustainability side of things, is can or glass more sustainable in your opinion?
There's no doubt the can's more sustainable, and for a number of reasons. And I think when you move into the realm of returnable glass bottles, like the scheme in Germany, and I think we'll see more and more of that, then I think it becomes more nuanced an answer. But in terms of the energy used to create the product, and crucially the energy used to ship the product, so cans are infinitely lighter and easier to ship than bottles, then that is the case. And I think that's one of the key reasons why you're seeing so much of the beer market in the UK and in elements of Europe, mainland Europe, now move predominantly into can.
Right. Thank you for that, David. Now, John's also popped in a question regarding in the US and hard seltzers such as White Claw have led breweries to launch their own efforts. Are you looking at doing something similar?
We have, and I think John's caught that in his questions. We launched a brand called Clean and Press this year, which is our hard seltzer brand, and we worked on this for quite a long time because we wanted to create, for us, being really, really proud of the liquid as a starting point. So the embryo of that, which James is holding up, is that it starts from the spirit made in our distillery here in Ellen. We don't use any neutral grain spirit. These spirits are made from scratch on site here in the northeast of Scotland, and they are the base of our hard seltzers. So interesting area for us. We're really pleased with the early results. We've had some good support from retailers on this one. It's also doing really well in e-com for us. And we really felt that it was important to separate slightly from the wider BrewDog brand and create a brand under the BrewDog distilling umbrella. So other beer businesses have taken a different approach to that, but we think that the power of the brand is really inversely proportional to its scope. So people know BrewDog predominantly as a beer business, and we wanted to certainly piggyback on that knowledge, but give the product its own space to breathe as well.
Absolutely. Next question came in from Ian. With profit projection paramount for businesses moving forward as it ever was, are there any new processes that you've put in place or any current processes that you've found useful to protect future cash flow?
Yeah, Karen and I don't let anyone hire anyone. I shouldn't say that to you, should I? But yeah, in theory, like in reality, then for a business like ours who are constantly in startup mode, then and when you think about that number 2 dogma of owning your numbers, then I'm glad that we had a culture within the business where if we spend money, we do it in a way that our team feel as though they're reaching into their pocket and spending their own hard-earned cash. And because of that behavioral trait, then we really managed to hunker down at a time when everyone's new KPI became the daily cash flow report. So I think it was more the spirit of the team, the culture of the team, and the BrewDog dogmas that really stood us in good stead at a very difficult time.
Now, next question that came up was, bearing in mind how the hospitality sector has declined this year due to the pandemic, what do you envisage UK growth to look like next year?
I'll give that one to James, actually.
I think that it's going to be, we're starting doing our budget for next year, and it's almost impossible to predict. I think that I'm an optimist, and I think that during the first quarter of next year, we will see the start of the end of the pain for hospitality. And we fundamentally believe that people want to come out and enjoy themselves in great spaces and great environments and get a great product. And we're hoping that towards this kind of warmer months of spring and into the summer, that we'll start to see us going back to, and our aim as a business is trying to get back to normal. I think there's going to be challenges within that. I think central London is a challenge for us, and people going back to work. I mean, I'm in an office in London, and you can see how people back and work in our office. I think that is going to be a big challenge for us going into next year, and businesses who are overexposed to office districts or business locations. At the same time, we have an upside in places like Clapham and Brixton, where people aren't traveling into the city as much. So it really does depend how you're exposed, but we are hopeful and optimistic about next year's retail growth.
Well, I think just to put some color on that for me as well, I think that, well, hasn't it just been an absolutely horrific year for hospitality? And I know, Christian, in a lot of these calls that get and sessions, it gets pretty dark with what everyone's gone through. I think on that note, I think one of the great things that's happened in the sector, in the hospitality sector, is there has been a broad collective spirit of how do we get through this together, which has been really, really positive. And I think events like this really, really help with that. We're not through the worst, obviously, because the announcements this week are pretty horrific for hospitality, and we're very concerned about December and January and February and what they hold. But at the same time, we also feel as though, I'm sure everyone feels as though there's a glimmer of hope with vaccine announcements and so on and so forth. We fundamentally believe that bars, restaurants, pubs are intertwined into the fabric of communities and societies. We've always believed that, and BrewDog is about community. So we think that if we can all support the sector through to the other side of this, then the pent-up demand from people who are desperate to experience the thrill and the theatre and the magic of a restaurant or hospitality experience is going to be such that we can all fast-track our way out of this. But we've got a few hard months till we get to that point, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Russell, for saving me from the Brexit, and everybody else from the Brexit question as well, because I really just don't think I can handle that one today. Karen, I'm going to come back to you on this one. And looking at the images in the background of the office environments, they're very creative. How do you continue to innovate in your workplace environments?
It's been a challenge, as JB says, and you can see he looks like he's on his own in London today. And it's very much the same up in Ellen. But one of the things we've done this year is we've made sure that we've made our KPIs, our stats more visible on the walls. So we've put TV screens up so we can put daily updates of how we're actually doing, whether it's with the work that Stu does into the groceries, whether it's production targets, whether it's the retail targets. So we're putting those, again, it's around the dogma about owning your numbers and making sure we're telling everyone what the numbers are and giving visibility. We're just working now on how the dogmas, because we had 10 dogmas before, but we've just condensed them down to the 5 that David eloquently talked through. We're just working how we're actually going to put those around all the walls at the moment, so to make them really visible on the production floor, into London, into our hop hub over at Motherwell as well. So getting that really out there. And I'm sure we'll put some Christmas decorations up somewhere this year. We'll maybe put a bit of tinsel around the polar bear in London. But it's just making sure we have those environments that people want to come back to work in, when we can come back to the offices as well, to make them safe environments. So we have a lot of imagery around the walls, and we're still working on making sure that it's a fun place to be when people can come back to work.
And I think BrewDog spaces, if you go back to when we first opened the early BrewDog bars, then there's been this kind of raw, stripped back aesthetic, and I think that we've seen a lot of that over the last decade, right? And ours has evolved a little bit, and that didn't come from design theory. That came from the brick walls were exposed and the ceiling was exposed because we really didn't have enough money to put a plasterboard ceiling in place, and the reality is that our approach to our office spaces have been really similar. They're really stripped back, concrete floors and bare walls, and the team treat them as their own. So we can't really take the credit for how great the spaces look. A lot of it is people in our team who are also graffiti artists who have built a wall. They've just grown, and because of that, the team really feel, I think, as though they are connected to and own those spaces.
Absolutely. I think when I was up at the brewery, it was a couple of the family or something like that who painted kind of like a lot of the stuff on the actual stills themselves or something like that in the original one. No?
Yeah, there's a guy who's worked for us for years, and he now freelances. He used to be a GM of one of our bars, who is responsible for all of the incredible graffiti and artwork that you see in BrewDog spaces, actually around the planet. He's traveled around the world doing this, a guy called Craig Fisher. And he's one of the key reasons that these spaces come to life, because he's done a phenomenal job with it.
Excellent. And just a last question that I'll squeeze in, if it's okay, before we finish up. But John's messaged in with another one saying, how did the Aldi experience feel? What's next with that?
It felt great. My favorite thing about that was the people who thought that we'd created this from scratch as a very well thought through campaign. And actually it was James Brown's idea, and an absolutely brilliant, stellar way to respond to a very difficult situation. So the conventional approach to that would have been to be extremely pissed off and to get the lawyers on the case, because the Aldi copy of Punk IPA was pretty close to the bone. But James came up with the idea of doing something a little bit more irreverent around the whole thing, and I thought Aldi responded really brilliantly to it, and then Stuart and the guys did a brilliant job of turning that into a commercial opportunity. So I think it's a good example of creating opportunity where there really wasn't any, and then the team have done a great job of turning it into a business opportunity as well.
Excellent, David. Thank you very much for that. Well, guys, I thought that was a brilliant session. I have to say, like, when researching for today and seeing so much in the press about you guys over the past couple of months, you have not stood still or stopped for breath through the pandemic. So I think all of your customers and all of your teams should be very pleased today, and we'll be circulating obviously this webinar out to lots of the other guys as well. Thank you very much. So that concludes our BrewDog special webinar today. Thank you all very much for taking the time to take part, guys. I thought that was brilliant. If there's anyone if there's anyone else who would like to be take part, or any companies you'd like to recommend. Sorry, I'm laughing because my colleague Arno is now just branding himself up when I put the camera on him, and thank you for taking part today. But BrewDog are also doing advent calendars as well. We're not selling them, fortunately, but definitely find them online, and we'll see you on the next webinar, guys. Thanks very much. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye now.